The Spencer Rattler experiment is over, and now it's time for Tyler Shough. Now, it goes without saying that the Saints quarterback room isn't exactly inspiring. Rattler showed some moments for the Saints, but there's also a reason that it's time to see what the 40th overall pick has in him, and I bet that's really been the plan all along. It's a bad 1-7 start for the Saints, so now Shough gets to start. Essentially, at the end of the season, Rattler and Shough will have ended up splitting the season reps, which is definitely fair. There's a good chance that neither guy is actually the answer at quarterback, so why not see if either guy can be your franchise player? With that being said though, the Saints definitely have one of the least inspiring quarterback situations in the league, and that's really not much of a shock. There's really been a lot of bad football played in New Orleans ever since Drew Brees retired, and quarterback hasn't really ever been solved since. There are currently 3 quarterbacks on the roster right now, and no, I'm not counting Jake Haener here. He's on the practice squad and was a 2023 4th rounder, but isn't active. He didn't play at all as a rookie, but got some playtime in 2024 and even got a start, and in total he had 226 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then he got waived in late August, only to end up right back on the Saints, but this time on the practice squad. So I'm not going to count him here, and outside of him, it's 3. Rattler, Shough, and then Taysom Hill, who can certainly play the position if he had to, but he's much more of a utility guy used in creative ways instead of a real NFL starting quarterback. So I really wouldn't go expecting him to start at all, and now that Rattler is benched, that puts all of the focus on Tyler Shough. He was a 2nd round pick going 40th overall, and admittedly he did feel like a little bit of a cry for help from the Saints. Derek Carr ended up retiring after the draft, and the Saints are now probably hoping that Shough had enough time to develop a good bit behind Rattler. But at the end of the day, he is already 26 years old. So with Shough, what you have just might be what you get. He really has had plenty of time to develop. He was at Oregon and Texas Tech for 3 years each, and then last year he had his best season in college at Louisville. He is now the 3rd quarterback drafted by the Saints in 3 years, following up Jake Haener, and then of course Spencer Rattler, who was a 5th round rookie last year and got 6 starts. He, of course, lost all 6 and then had 1,300 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Rattler, funny enough though, is actually the youngest quarterback that the Saints have. He was born in 2000, while both Shough and Haener were born in 1999, with Haener being about 6 months older. But it was Rattler that got to start to kick off the Saints season this year, and honestly that made the most sense. On the bright side, Tyler Shough has been able to sit back and learn a little bit while not having to immediately be the starter, but on the other hand, Rattler more so got thrown into the fire, and it definitely had some moments where he looked solid, but it just wasn't sustainable. I do think he's going to be a backup in the NFL at the very least for a while though. He can absolutely start for a team in a pinch, and that comes after seeing him play for a pretty bad Saints team. After not throwing a touchdown or a pick in week 1, he actually played really well against the 49ers in week 2. It was by far the best game of his pro career. He threw 3 touchdowns, had 207 yards, and completed 73.5% of his passes. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't a win for the Saints, and they ended up losing 20-13, but Rattler played well. That game was a sign that he had improved a lot from his rookie year, and he could maybe be the guy. He threw a touchdown in each of his next 3 games with only 1 pick along the way, and that did include a 26-14 victory over the Giants. He didn't have a touchdown or a pick against the Pats the next week, and then what was really the beginning of him getting benched was against the Bears in week 7. Rattler hadn't had a game with more picks than touchdowns until the last 2. The Bears game just was ugly. He threw 2 touchdowns, but he ended up having 3 interceptions, a career high. That was bad, and then the straw that broke the camel's back was just an inefficient offensive game against the Bucs on Sunday. He had just 136 yards and a pick, and the Saints lost 24-3. And in the game, Rattler got benched for Shough. So at the end of the day, it's really not too surprising that Shough got named the starter. Now, that actually wasn't his first game appearance. He had 2 incomplete passes against the Seahawks in September, but he really actually played against Tampa. Shough had 128 yards and a pick, and it makes sense to see if he can perform better with a full week of preparation and a game. And at the end of the day, Rattler went 1-13 starting. So Shough really can't be much worse, I'd imagine. So Jake Haener didn't work. Rattler didn't work. So now it's time to see if Tyler Shough will. But I wouldn't go betting on it. He was a 2nd round pick and was somehow the 3rd quarterback taken at the NFL draft behind Cam Ward and Jackson Dart. But unlike those two, Tyler Shough is already 26 years old, and he had quite the bizarre path to get to the pros. Shough went to Hamilton High in Chandler, Arizona, and ended up becoming a 4-star recruit and the number 6 pro-style quarterback in the 2018 class. Yes, the 2018 class. That was a long time ago, and the number 1 quarterback in that class was Trevor Lawrence, who's going into year 5 in the NFL. So yeah, Shough is a lot older than the average rookie, and once you understand his college journey, it'll all make a bit more sense. He originally committed to play at Oregon, which at the time had Justin Herbert, so Shough just had to ride the bench. He only appeared in 3 games as a redshirt freshman, and then the next year, he got the garbage time reps behind Herbert, throwing for 144 yards and 3 touchdowns. But then the next season, he finally got his chance to start for the Ducks once Herbert got drafted, but it was that weird COVID-19 2020 season. Not only that, but the Pac-12 was also a terrible conference to be in because they didn't even play until November. So Oregon only ended up playing in 7 games. Shough ended up passing for 1,559 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, and he ran for 271 yards and 2 touchdowns. Oregon ultimately went 4-2 and then lost to Iowa State in the Fiesta Bowl. Now, Shough was the starter, but Anthony Brown was also getting some reps too, and the team just wasn't really too sure whether or not Shough was the guy, which ultimately led to him transferring to Texas Tech. Tyler Shough's tenure at Texas Tech is pretty simple to explain. He just couldn't stay on the field. He was named the starter in year 1 and then broke his collarbone against Texas in the 4th game of the year, so he ended the season with just 872 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. He then had to compete for the starting job in 2022 with Donovan Smith and Baron Morton, only to start the season opener and suffer another collarbone injury. He missed 6 games on the year and then returned, and he started and won the last 4 games of the season, including against Ole Miss in the Texas Bowl. On the year, he had 1,304 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 4 rushing touchdowns. There was definitely some optimism, and 2023 felt like it could maybe be his year where he could propel into a legit NFL draft prospect. He then fractured his fibula against West Virginia in the 4th game of the season and finished with 746 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions, so that didn't happen. Tyler Shough only started 20 games through his first 6 years in college, 7 at Oregon, all in 2020, and then 13 at Texas Tech. He, simply put, just could never stay on the field and put it all together. That was until he transferred to Louisville in 2024. Shough got to use his miraculous 7th year of eligibility, and finally, he stayed on the field on what was surely his last chance. Louisville had a great season, going 8-4 and making the Sun Bowl, which Shough did ultimately opt out of to prepare for the NFL draft, but in all, Shough threw for 3,195 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, and he rushed for a single touchdown. It was honestly a really good ending to a pretty crazy collegiate story, and because of that, it's easy to feel happy for Tyler Shough, especially for him to turn a 7-year career into a ton of money after being a 2nd-round pick. But no matter how much of a feel-good story it is, it doesn't mean he'll work out in the pros. The Saints are easily one of the worst spots to go as a quarterback right now. It feels like the team is going absolutely nowhere, and that's been the case for years now. This is not going to be some very simple rebuild for new head coach Kellen Moore. At 1-7, the Saints are clearly one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they would actually hold the 1st overall pick if the draft was tomorrow. Now, that really doesn't mean much with a long way to go this season. I mean, it also doesn't mean much because we don't even know what quarterback will emerge as the top guy. I mean, for now, it's Fernando Mendoza at Indiana, but Dante Moore from Oregon is right there, and what about Lenore Sellers or Ty Simpson? I mean, I don't know what guy is going to be the first pick at the draft. But before the Saints go and make that decision on who they want to draft, you have to make sure that you don't have a franchise quarterback on the roster. Spencer Rattler has been ruled out, and now it's time to see if Tyler Shough can be the guy. But if I'm being honest, I'd bet on the Saints drafting a quarterback high in April.